you like your Volkswagens rare, you have come to the right place. Today we are driving a Type 34 Karmann Ghia Razor Edge. And if you like your cars a little on the unusual side, then do please consider hitting the subscribe button and seeing what else we've got coming up. Hello, welcome to Furious Driving, and today we are out in a Volkswagen Karmann Ghia. Now, I've not taken leave of my senses, this is a Karmann Ghia, but you may be thinking of the little bubbly, curvy, swoopy, cutie little car that started in 1955 and ran until 1974. I know exactly what you're thinking. No, this is the Razor Edge, the Type 34, the European Ghia if you're watching in America. This is the lesser known, less common, but slightly more elegant perhaps, a bit more rakish version of the Ghia. So the name of this car is rather interesting because instead of having a company name then a model name, this basically has an entire name made of company names. It was built for Volkswagen. It was constructed or put together by Karmann, and it was designed by Ghia, hence Volkswagen Karmann Ghia. And of course it's all based on Volkswagen mechanical parts. Now, the design by Sergio Sartorelli is significantly crisper than the original Type 14. Type 14 was because it was built on the Volkswagen Beetle platform, the Type 1, and then the 4 meaning the coupe and sporty stuff. This though is built on the all new for 1961 Type 3 platform, hence it's a Type 30 then 4 to make it into the Type 3 coupe sports car. So yes, this is looking at the new 1960s crisp, edgy styling, more influenced by jet aircraft and spaceships, and very much more futuristic. In America they called it the fuselage body styling, a much cleaner and less fussy look than the 1950s styling. Now, this car was unveiled in Frankfurt in 1961. In fact, it had been on the drawing board since 1958 as a concept, but perhaps this styling was a little too edgy because it wasn't the massive sales success that Volkswagen hoped it would be, and so it ran only from 1961 up until 1969. Now, giving the car its Razor Edge nickname are these swage lines which run the entire belt line of the car, interrupted only just by the B-post where they scoop up into the window, but actually continue all the way around the entire width of the back of the car and only really come to an end on the nose where they go down under the bumper. We also have these crisp, almost fins coming along the top of the wings, giving it yet more sharp, edgy design. Now, one styling thing which has been noted more than once is the fact that the back of the car does more than a little resemble the Chevy Corvair. These round tail lights with the main chrome bezel on the outside, a smaller central bezel inside, and split top-bottom for indicators, brakes and reflectors. They really are a very attractive little design, but these taillights combined with the long flowing tail of the car, which truncates very hard in the cam tail, do give it a very Corvair-like look at the back. And there was also criticism that because of the positioning and the shape of the lights on the back being so similar to the lights on the front, it sometimes looked too similar front to back. It does have very similar long overhangs from the front and rear glass all the way to the ends of the cars, but it's actually very nicely proportioned with these equally long front and rear sections and just a small bubble in the centre for the passenger area. It's very, very cool in a 1960s way, isn't it? So here at the front is where these swage lines finally resolve. They just come to a very crisp edge into the bumper, or actually below the bumper as it happens. They vanish behind the number plate so you can't see it anymore. Then, as I say, you have the matching round headlamps giving almost a mirror image front to back, but we also have the driving lights in the centre giving it a bit more shape, and this lovely sculpted front end. This is a really beautiful piece of artwork in metal, which you couldn't have if it wasn't for the fact it was the air-cooled rear-engine car and doesn't need the radiator, so you can make the face pretty much anything you want, and they've done a really rather nice design here. Now, Tesla owners and other EV owners for that matter get very excited about the fact that they've got a front trunk and you haven't. However, Volkswagen have been doing this for most of the last century. So you can just reach under here, one-handed, push the catch, and up comes the bonnet. Not revealing an engine, of course, it's an air-cooled Volkswagen, but a nice big, although it is quite low, boot space, so you can have lots of luggage here in the front if you're going touring with the car or going shopping even. This is very, very deep to the back, very, very wide because it's a wide, low car, but because it's a low car, there isn't much depth, so you can't get many tall things in here. Also concealed here in the front of the car in this bulbous nose is the spare wheel, which is right up tight against the slam panel, and also the filler neck for the fuel tank. But that's not the only trick the Type 34 has up its sleeve. Open up this big boot covering deck lid and you've got another storage area for stuff. Again, low flat stuff, so you need to be packing pretty carefully when you're going away for a trip in this car. And the owners of this car have taken it around Europe a couple of times, so it can be done, but you've got lots more space for stuff. Ideally not refrigerated items because the engine is under here. It does get quite warm in this one. Now this was a newly designed 1493 or 1500 as they called it, flat 4 engine as always. They called it the pancake or the suitcase because it was so low and, well, flat basically, which was the reason we could have this extra storage space in the back of the car. The reason it's so compact is because they moved some of the fan gear further down so it's on the crankshaft rather than driven by pulleys and things, making it much easier to package. Now initially when the car was launched it was single carb and made 45 horsepower. This is not brisk. By the time the car came to the UK in right-hand drive form in 1964, they renamed it the 1500S. It now made 54 horsepower. To do this, they gave it twin carbs, increased compression, and changed the shape of the pistons. Later on in production, they changed it to a 1600. That was fairly low compression, so it made the same horsepower, but a little tiny bit more torque. 0 to 60 was virtually identical, but higher top speed. The final development these engines got was twin port heads. Now Volkswagen said they were reluctant to do this because of reliability. People bought Volkswagens because they knew they were going to be reliable. But tuning company Okrasa had been doing those since the mid-50s for Volkswagens with no reported problems. So it seems a bit of a strange decision to leave it so very long to offer this as standard on the car. Now climbing into the car, it is incredibly low, properly sports car low. Virtually bum scraping the ground, but once you're in here, this huge glass area gives you absolutely tons of room. And one rather exciting find in this car is this has got an original factory electric sunroof. Here's a fun fact for you. The Type 34 Karmann Ghia was actually one of the very first cars in the world to have an electric sunroof optioned from the factory. The other two cars as contenders to be the first are the Porsche 356 and the BMW 2002. I think this might even share some of the mechanism with the Porsche. Right, let's take you off that tripod and show you around this beautiful interior. Oh, pillarless doors! Did you see this? Pillarless glass, love it! Starting right in front of us, we have the iconic Wolfsburg logo, the castle in the centre of the steering wheel, complete with the horn ring. Oh, cute! Not much road clearing ability, but it does sound quite adorable. This is in a white or cream actually steering wheel, which matches the trim and, well, the door trim as well, the seats and the door, which are done in leather. I'm not sure what the original material was, but this was done about 15 or so years ago, maybe even longer ago actually. This was retrimmed. Now the quality of the materials from the factory really are good. This is the original plastic textured material in the door top, and it is absolutely fantastic, and it's just so solid. And it's a nice chrome trim running front to back, which actually continues in the panel behind me. Then we're going into the coloured lighter part of the door panel, which contains these nice solid cast metal door handles and locks, and a little keep fit window. And to shut the door, this door pull is tapered and streamlined like a part of an aircraft, like the wheel cowl of a plane or a drop tank or something. It's very elegant, very nice. Going into a contrast red which matches the carpet here. Nice stretchy door pull and another metal trim panel, just keeping lots of detail going. This is an awful lot of detail which is expensive to make and to fit in the car. Also notice right into the shut of the door, you've got this plastic coating here. This didn't need to be here. This could have been body colour as it would be on most cars, but this is here. This is wrapped around, giving it, I don't know if it helps or hinders with rust protection, but certainly it looks nice. It's not something you even notice at first. That's tucked underneath the rubber weather seal. So this is a really well put together car, really well thought out, very Volkswagen of its day. Now moving into the cockpit of the car, we have the start at the bottom. We've got the 3 pedals, floor mounted accelerator, so that's a little odd to get used to. Brake and clutch are also floor hinged, and the brake and clutch do have small Volkswagen logos there in the centre. And you notice this wheel well really does protrude a long way into the cabin, so your feet are really heavily offset to the left. It's a slightly odd driving position, but something you get used to. Again, there's something people criticised Alphas and things for an awful lot, but then other manufacturers do seem to do it quite a bit as well. And because we've got a rear mounted engine, we have no actual transmission tunnel. We have this tunnel shape through the centre just to give a bit of structural strength to the car, but it doesn't do much else, so it doesn't have to be very big. And so the whole under dash area is big and open. The dash itself is body colour. This is called Ferrari grey apparently. The car was repainted around 20 years ago, and I think it was smoke grey before. which is virtually the same colour. This is, I think, just ever so slightly darker. But we have, well, it's all metal, obviously. We have a glove box in here, which is typically cardboard inner, as was the fashion of the day. Then we have a grab handle on the far left. This is a curious air freshener-like round circular device, which is actually the speaker for the original Blaupunkt radio. This is absolutely beautiful. Look at the sculpting and the shape of the the cast aluminium section here, which is butted straight into shiny chrome. So I don't know how they would have done that in the manufacturing process. I don't know if it still works or not, but it doesn't really do a lot in modern terms. So underneath the dash, just hidden away, if you drop the camera, you can see the newer, more useful Sony, which is Bluetooth and CD player and stuff. Now, above that, we've got ventilation controls up here. We also have ventilation controls down here. The workings of air-cooled Volkswagen ventilation is frankly a mystery to pretty much everyone. Then moving over to in front of the driver, we have just 3 dials. Well, there's a 12-volt sat-nav phone charger socket just there. Very forward thinking. Then we have lights and wipers and washers here on the right hand side, so very minimal in way of controls. In the centre we have the speedometer going all the way to 100 miles an hour. It's quite interesting how they've arranged the numbers. They've only put 5 digits in, so it doesn't actually go all the way to 0. It starts at 10, jumps 20 mph to 30, 20 to 50, 20 to 70, and then 30 round to 100. That's interesting, and I'm sure not in any way confusing and worrying if you're driving in an average speed check area. On the right hand side, we've got our fuel tank from R for empty, going all the way quarter half full, and a variety of check lights for charge, oil, so forth, and direction indicators for the indicators. And over on the left of those 3, quite excitingly for 1964, we've got an electric clock. That's rather an exciting thing to find in here. Now the dash top is very slender, very small and discreet almost. So no tea shelf are you going on here. You will not get a cup of tea on that. There is what could be a sub tea shelf, but only if you've got very sticky sweets. This is sloping off. This is like a padded area to give you some occupant crash protection in the event that you decide to crash. But only things that are very tacky will stick onto that, because otherwise they will just roll straight off. A little tiny ashtray underneath there for your sweetie wrappers. And as I say, there is the nice cream steering wheel, and the ignition barrel is tucked down here on the right hand side, virtually touching this pad, so it's actually a little awkward to use, but that's where your starter is. Finally, we've got our indicators here on the left hand side, and nothing else on the steering column. Then we have a 4-speed manual gearbox with reverse obviously, and a big handbrake. That's our lot of our controls really. I actually don't even know where the sunroof control is. Now the rear of the car is a small bench seat, but basically it's a 2+2. You can't really get an adult in there. You can get a child in, but not much else. However, it does have one more trick up its sleeve. Pull this little toggle here, and this folds down, and you have got either a massive boot space for lots more luggage, so you can hide away all your gear and going on a long trip, or the biggest tea shelf you have ever seen. Right, so this car is auto choke. It starts pretty easily. Now that iconic VW air-cooled thrum really is something you cannot mistake for anything else, well, apart from maybe a Subaru or a Porsche 911 or anything air-cooled. Anyway, it's quite iconic and it's quite different, and it certainly has a tone all of its own, and you know you're driving a Volkswagen. Now the car is not massively powerful. 54 horsepower is not earth-shattering. But the car doesn't really weigh a lot, so it's not a massive problem that it's got to haul a lot of weight around, so it pulls away with real smoothness. The gearbox is very nice and light and snickety. You'd think with all the mechanism going all the way behind you to the back of the car, they'd be pretty vague and weird, but it's actually not. It's actually rather good. Now this is a 1964 car. It was built in November 64 and it was registered in January 65 and sold from a dealer in London. So it stayed in southeast England pretty much all its life. It apparently got laid up in 1977 and then was restored over a couple of years in the late 90s. And so what you see now is how it was restored, what, 20 something years ago now, so it's held up rather well. This is a middle of the run car. It's an S rather than a 1600, but it does mean it's got a few of the changes that happened during the car's life. And those changes followed the development of the Type 3 as it went through its life. So the car, for example, started off with drum brakes all round, but midway through production, it gained front disc brakes and dual circuits on the brakes as well. 4-speed manual was always standard across the range, but in 1968, I believe, a 3-speed auto turned up, along with an option of an IRS, independent rear suspension, which I think for the final year of production was made standard. Now the car rides much more nicely than the Type 1 Karmann Ghia. In the Type 3, gone are the kingpins, in come ball joints, and it's got torsion beam suspension. Twin torsions on where the ruffle axle position, and they cross in a sort of an X. So you have a nice, smooth, pliant ride. It's by no means a sports car. But then sports cars back in the early 60s weren't that quick either from most manufacturers. It's got enough going, but this is quite a steep hill and we're happily trundling up at 40 miles an hour and the engine's not really trying very hard at all. The pedals do take a little getting used to because they are fairly well offset, and the floor hinging means they seem to go a long way away from you, and so does the gear change. When you're going to the first and third bank of gears, it feels like you're as far away as your arm can possibly reach, whereas the steering wheel is pushed right up tight to you. Steering obviously is not power assisted, doesn't need to be, there's no weight in the front at all. It's quite light, but as you get through a corner, it does weight up quite heavily, giving a nice bit of feel as to what the car is doing. And it is a nice car to just drift around in. The styling is just absolutely beautiful on the outside, and the inside just feels so incredibly airy, so much glass around you. It feels almost like you're in a convertible, but without having to take the roof off and get sunburnt. And speaking of convertibles, there was one planned, a prototype, or a couple of prototypes in fact, were built, and they were even shown to the public, but it never went into production, which is a shame. It looked absolutely amazing. Those sharp lines, the straight edges, really suited having the roof taken off. It worked so well. Now, it may not look like a lot of storage in those 3 small boot areas on this car, but I happen to know from, well, personal experience really, that they are actually quite usable. When I was a child, we had one of these as a family car, and every year we'd load up, mum, dad, me and my brother, big tent, all the stuff you need for a family's camping holiday, and drive down to Cornwall in it every year. So yeah, a Type 34 can be a very usable classic car. In fact, I believe that car is still known and in the club. That was also a C-Reg car, but in a slightly browner colour than this. So I have fond memories of a childhood in those sticky vinyl back seats on holiday in one of these cars. So this is the Type 34, but there's actually a third number in those nomenclature, what those numbers mean. First of all, there was the Type 343. That was your bog standard left-hand drive coupe. Then there was the Type 345, which was left-hand drive coupe with electric sunroof. Now we come to the right-hand drive cars. Right-hand drive coupe without sunroof is the 344, and this car we're sat in right now is a 346 right-hand drive coupe with sunroof. And of course the final number is the 341. That was the short-lived, never to make production convertible. This does drive so nicely through the corners. You're not going fast, we're doing about 40 miles an hour at the moment. And it just flows through the corners. It doesn't really make you want to push it fast. and try and get the most performance out of it. It's not that kind of a car. But it is just glorious to just roll around in, and everyone looks at this thing. Now, unfortunately, the Type 34 wasn't the sales success they'd really hoped for. When it was revealed, it met with a very mixed reception. Some people loved the more futuristic, modern, sleek styling, the crisp looks, but it also alienated a lot of other buyers as well. It didn't have that cute puppy dog look of the Type 14. So yeah, that was maybe a mistake going so radical with the style. Personally, I think it looks absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, the biggest market for Volkswagen at the time was America, and Americans bought European sports cars because they looked, well, European. This was going very much more Americanized, mid-Atlantic, if you like. So perhaps that wasn't the best maneuver in terms of a styling decision. But as is always the way, we look back and we see these bold moves with far fonder hindsight than perhaps they were viewed with at the time. They sold about 42,000 of these things compared to 440,000 Type 14s. Survival rate isn't massively strong. There's about 2,500 of these things left thrumming around. I think about 400 of those are in America, where it was actually never officially imported, but there were a lot of grey imports and a lot came in through Canada. Oh, hit 40 miles an hour and that transmission whine is absolutely glorious. A lot of wind noise though. Do notice a lot of wind noise. And when you look at the outside of the car, you notice how tall and thin the tyres are. So the wheels do fill the arches very impressively. Makes the car look a lot more modern in that respect than many other cars with say 13 or 14 inch wheels. This has got the 15s on it, so it just has a much more modern appearance. So it has aged incredibly well. If, like me, you are one of those people who really does enjoy that clean mid-century Mad Men style of design, then this is a car that really will appeal to you. This wasn't a cheap car at the time. This would have cost about the same as 2 Beetles to buy brand new. So that too would have helped keep it fairly exclusive. So thank you for watching today. I hope you've enjoyed this ride out in this very rare, very unusual Type 34 Karmann Ghia. I've certainly enjoyed driving it, so I hope you've enjoyed watching half as much as I've enjoyed being at the wheel. Join me again next time when I'm driving something completely different.